what I was going to do is go ahead and migrate over to the training plan. But before I did that, for those of you that that may not have worked inside the portal or set the portal up as a as a launch screen yet, a home screen yet inside your application, same kind of functionality here where I can go through and choose different widgets if I wanted to say take that training schedule off or take the about me. Since I already know who I am off of my plan, I can do that, switch back to a normal view, and it will update all of those pieces. This is something else that we can also configure at a site level if you don't want to provide that control over to students. The second place I was going to go was over to my plan, and I can do that from the menu, or in this case, I'm going to hit my plan button there, and I am logged in as a supervisor. So you see my student selector there at the top. You wouldn't see this if you didn't, if you were not set up as a supervisor going in, and a few different changes again to this page. One of those is including the same compliance gauges, so I can see what my percent compliance is for, again, those current items, those things that are 30 days out, those things that are in the next 60 days. And again, have the same option of switching to that accordion panel kind of row view instead of the cards, but I do like the cards. The other thing that you'll see very often inside the learner interface now are moving the options from a series of essentially filters on the side to this kind of extruder that will come out. So now if I say I want to see everything that's assigned, I can do that. And showing all is something that we can also set as a default now for any view. One of the other things here on the plan, and I'm going to switch students real quick and change over to Lisa Boss because I know that she has more requirements assigned out there than I do. So you see I've got paging now at the top. And one of the things, just from a navigational standpoint, the other thing I like about this card view is that it's all swipeable, so it makes it a little friendlier navigating, especially on a small screen if you're getting down to either phone or tablet delivery. So again, a subtle change, but something that that I do like inside the application. Now I'm going to move over back to my my own view, because otherwise I will be lost when I get to some of the other pages. So taking a look at that training plan and some of the updates there. I'm going to go ahead and open the menu up here. Again, this menu may look a little different from yours. I have this one set to where I can drag things, on and off. So if I wanted to, to look at manage teams or add students, I can do that. Of course, you guys know all these colors can be changed and updated. The image is all changed and updated there. So you may have a bit of a different look and feel there. But one of the things that has changed inside the application are the dashboards. Again, similar to the changes that were made on the learning portal side there, and really more of a cosmetic update than anything else. And if I scroll through the different dashboards I have on the assorted page here, same kind of things where I have my filters, where I have the ability to change from, say, quarter to month in my view. And one of the things that's relatively new here, was not included in the first round of dashboards coming out, is those that have deeper drill down abilities. I have the option of going straight to a report. So if I want to see, in this case, that compliance gauge, which is largely based on a employee status report, I can click that report button and it will bring me directly over to a status graph page there, so I don't have to navigate out and back over to the reports menu option to get there. So some minor updates in the dashboards. Again, the same kind of functionality here that existed before. It's just the layout is a touch different. So for choosing what widgets are going to be in each column, left and right, and whether it's supervisor widgets or student widgets, they get added. All of that happens on this little edit tab, or could be preset. So when I go back to I can see those, and again, have a little bit more of a frameless experience there. Well, the dashboards have been inside the system for quite a while now. They came out at the same time as the portal, and again, completely based on your demand, of course, on requests from existing users. All these things have been added to the system. The other piece, and really expanding the reporting side of the world, are a whole series of visualizations inside the learner interface. So again, kind of standard reporting interface where I can run reports about myself. I can run instructor reports like sign-up sheets and rosters. But on the supervisor reports, certainly some enhancements there. It's familiar here. My favorites over to the side, my standard reports, but here at the bottom, a number of different visualizations, and I'm going to start these from the bottom up. The same controls manage these data visualizations that operate for reports. So if you have access to a particular group of students and don't have access as a supervisor to other students, you would not see those groups. So there are filters at the top. Right now I'm looking at multiple areas. I'm looking at my ERT team, my HSE work area, and my production department. So I've got multiple groups selected. If I also wanted to add the admin department, I could do that, and those numbers will all update there. Then I'm going to just go ahead and take those guys back out because my completion percentages are better without those folks in. Again, here there's an option on each of these visualizations if you want to print or export those to a PDF or maybe an image file. This SVG is an image file as well, just not used as much on the website necessarily as the PNG or the JPEG. I can hover over these different segments in this area. Oh, I just got ahead of myself there. So here, if I'm looking at requirements that are aging and I want to see everything that's in this OK box, I can click on that segment of the circle chart there, the donut chart in this case, and see those students. I can see the counts. I can actually go in and search here, which is nice if you have a long list. In this case, I've got multiple pages there. I can also export this information directly to Excel, just stepping from the data visualization itself. So if I wanted to export that info, I can do it here, trying to make it easier to get information in and out of the system. And again, these bands are driven based on what I have selected up top. So, my supervised groups, I have the production department, I have the HSE work area and the emergency response team, and can see those different groups. And again, same function here, letting me drill down into the specific detail on the back side there. So a number of different requirements-based visualizations on this side. One of the things here at the bottom, I won't belabor, but in this case, I have the capability turned on to change the, the color, the theming on these guys as well. So if I want to go with super crazy bright, or if I want something that's a little more kind and gentle, to see there, all of those controls are in place as well. So requirements, focused visualizations, so completion percentage, the compliance gauge, aging by group, the forecast of upcoming training, which is one that I think is a interesting ad and something I'd like to see in more places. So for the groups that I supervise, what training is coming up in the next 180 days and broken up by groups. If I want to see just the things that are coming due in January 2019, I can see that Heather Canales has the employee handbook course, and it's going to be due, or it is due, on 125. So I have the ability to take a look at some of those. And again, I could export, probably not really valid in the case where I only have a single item. And again, another report that I thought was an interesting ad here is by department, what requirements are past due versus coming up. And in this demo database, I have a lot of past due training, so hopefully you don't have a production department with 600 past due items. But if you did want to see, say for that department, what are all the things that are coming due in the next little period of time, I can go out and see just those things that are upcoming for those students. And again, if I wanted to export those, I could do that. So a little deeper dive into requirements. From a visualization standpoint, tests are the same way. So added a lot of information about tests and item analysis. Again, the filtering is exactly the same here. So I only have access to test activity or test results for students that I supervise, right? So my ERT team versus my administrative team, or whatever the case is there. You'll see this guy, that's a pretty good sized group. It'll take a second to refresh. I'm going to go back to my all here, so we can see some actual test attempts versus that smaller group. But here, looking at tests passed, failed versus passed, and then a distribution of scores for my test by day. I can see questions passed and failed. And then I think one of the more important are getting into missed questions by objective. So I can see energy isolation objective versus ammonia versus my shortcut menu, and what has been passed versus what has been failed there. And I can drill down into those. So we think about the evaluator system and organizing questions by objective. If I have this objective for energy isolation, and I see that, gosh, those questions are only being answered correctly, somewhere around 50% of the time, a little less than 50% of the time, I can drill down to the level of tag out devices versus lockout devices versus OSHA standards and authorized employees. These are just the top 4 missed questions out of that one particular objective there, as opposed to, say, if I go into that ammonia objective, or here for identifying toolbar actions, editing data versus demoing sound, and the delete button there. So again, more insight into test questions, and then on test attempts. So for a particular test, what is the average number of test attempts for this group? So I can see in this fire terms test, the average is just over 1.5 attempts per student there. And if I say change to my HSE area and refresh that, guy, I may have an entirely different test. Again, in this case, on the objective side, different objectives that are missed. We can talk about unknown objectives a bit. Sometimes those happen because of SCORM courses coming in. So as I move through each of those groups, I can see that information. The other thing, just from a control standpoint, I'm going to go back to all because I wanted to have more data over less here. But down at the bottom is really the control for my date range here. So if I'm, in this case, I'm looking at, tests in the past, so from December 7th of last year to today. But if I wanted to say just look at July through November, or if I just wanted to look at October through through November 13th, I can do that. So again, just having some control over those views and ability to dive down a bit into more of that test data. The third new visualization piece here, and it's a pretty quick and easy one. This is just lesson activity. So look at the the legend across the bottom. I can see failed test versus passed test, checklists that were started and not met. I've been doing a lot of checklist testing using the mobile apps, so that's why you see that those items so high there. But if I change that view out just a little bit, I can see other things like the number of waived lessons. And again, these are by day across the month, so 1 through 31 for the month of October there. And if I want at the bottom, I can do some filtering. So if I said, gosh, you know what, I'm just not interested in checklists, I can uncheck those boxes and get those things out of the way for me. I can also, again, change my grouping, right? Because these are based purely on the supervisor assignments I have in back office. And I can also change from, grouping stacking these bars by day to grouping them into kind of parallel bars for each day. So all depending on the view that you want there, but driven completely on lessons that people are taking inside, I say inside Learner. Again, for things like checklists, those could be done on the mobile apps as well and have that same data reflected here. The final thing from a visualization standpoint, and we'll move into some other areas of the system, are form activities. And you may have seen this in earlier demos as well. This is something that oh gosh, a while back we picked up an award for in the visualization side as well. I'm going to use this extruder again just to increase my time frame, because these are our form activities. So if you've not used forms inside the system, there are kind of the concept of a threaded discussion. So in this case, I have contributors that are nodes, so Lisa and Richard, and then I have topics, so checklists versus competencies, and SAP job titles versus business titles, and the weight of a line identifies how many interactions there are there. So Richard has had 3 interactions with this AICC security warning for secure and non-secure data topic. So you see that line is heavier, thicker than the single time that he replied to this checklist and competency kind of topic. I can also make some changes. So I want to get rid of people's faces. I can do that. I can hide names, topic labels. I can see non-contributors, so I get a lot of people that float out to the outside there that have never done any or had any interaction with the with those forms, which doesn't necessarily help me as much in this view. But the other thing that is interesting is I can change my grouping. So now if I want to focus less on the person and more on the department, I can change that. I also have the option of including different this is verbs, because this is all xAPI data that's being written back to the embedded learning record store inside the system. But now if I change that, instead of seeing Richard and Lisa, I see the production department and their level of contribution compared to the admin department. And again, in this case, if I add non-contributors, I can see that maintenance, sales, and the home office folks have not made any contributions there. So again, just a different way of looking at those. Now, I recognize that a lot of you have not seen forums inside the system, so I wanted to take a look there, and we'll look here in Learner first, and we get into back office. I'll show you where some of these things get set up, but I'm going to my just my forums menu group there, and waiting. Why do I suddenly have a delay? There we go. So there are really three different flavors of forums inside the system, and a few different purposes. So there are open forums, there are course forums, and then you'll see way at the bottom here, I've got some class forums. So the idea behind class forums is, as you see the date following this particular VTA evaluator class, I can have a form that's turned on for a specific instance of a course. So if I wanted as an instructor to post questions and have students respond to those, I could do that. This form is open only to the people that are, I'm going to say, my cohorts inside that particular course. Now, at a class level, what I can do is have course forums as well. And what happens is when I finish my class, say this VTA evaluator class, let's see. So somebody bounced onto the onto hold, so I got the mute there. Apologies for that. But essentially, whenever I finish this class, I could automatically be joined to a course forum. So you think of kind of an alumni forum. Everyone that went through VTA evaluator training gets added to that same forum, or maybe everyone that's in a particular supervisor development program gets added to that forum, and they can add, post, give answers there. Again, in this case, this post was marked as accepted by the person that posted it. So Richard said, hey, we're looking at using VTA assessments, and this person said, we can use checklist for that, and Richard in this case marked that as an accepted answer. So it shows up at the top of the screen there, if you have the option of voting things up and down. And then the final format of forums are those that are completely open. So if I take a look at this RISC LMS use tips and tricks, the way that I got into this forum is just by going out and finding an open forum and joining it. So it doesn't have any tether back to my training history, but again, if I want to look at this topic on SAP job titles versus business titles, I can see that I've had multiple people make responses there. Some of those have been voted up, nothing voted down here, at this point. But if I wanted to find other open forums, I could do that. So if I'm also interested in going out and looking at different content types and maybe the difference between CMI5 and xAPI, I can go out and get to those, to those same forums this way. And again, I'll show you how we turn those on in the back office side of the world. So with that, the very last thing I was going to show as a change here on the learner side of the world is again a fairly subtle one. I'm going to go to my development plan, right? So if someone is doing a competency assessment and assigns a course or a task or developmental item to a student, that shows up on their development plan. And those development plans have been updated to include those targets as well. Not super exciting in this chart because everything that Richard has due is due in the next 30 days. But if I switch that out to Lisa, where now she has things that are due further out in time, I'll get multiple circles on my chart there. And again, I can see, this is a course that she has gone past the target date for, where maybe here's a task, right? Unload the next 5 trucks has been assigned, and she has until whatever date to do that. But again, just a little bit of a different look here. And again, all of this data driven from competency assessments. So that kind of the big changes on the learner side of the world. And I recognize we're hitting about the half-hour mark, so I'm going to switch over to back office, and I will of course leave learner open, and we can always come back here. But from a back office standpoint, just a few changes really to to note on this side. One of those, if I take a look over at the administrator part of the world, just a super minor change. If I go to my email templates, the length for email templates, the character limit there has been expanded to 64,000 characters. There won't be a test on that part later, but if you do need to have a more generous or more robust message, you can do that inside the system. Inside the events area for both history and schedule. I'm going to leave that page because I'm not making any changes. For both history and schedule, we have updated significantly the I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself there. The filtering on these grids. So where in the past you could look at courses in a particular period of time, I can go through and add a huge number of filters here, including how many people are have a waitlist status, how many have a waitlist pending status, so their supervisor hasn't signed that course off. One that I find is pretty convenient is if I just want to see courses that require approval, I can set that to true, apply my filter, or change it to false, apply my filter. If I wanted to say look at a particular classroom location, so show me any class that starts, contains, does not contain, say Houston, right? So now when I hit apply, I can see all my courses that are in Houston, and maybe if I want to change that filter again, I can go through and let's see if not starts with, I want it to contain whatever other any classroom that contains the letter A. So being able to go through and do some additional filtering there, or say just looking for courses that have lessons, and I'll take the classroom piece off there, and now I can see just those things that have some kind of activity that's associated outside of just attending the class. And again, exact same thing works on the schedule side of the world, and actually probably a better place to use the example of has lessons, because my scheduled classes very often are just going to be something that has a take the class piece. But if I have a pre-reading, if I have a post-class evaluation or test, those will all show as lessons here. The catalog option that I wanted to show that drives the ability to use those forums is here inside my course catalog. Again, this is all fairly fairly consistent with the or actually very consistent with the last couple iterations of the system. So my filters at the top here. It's one thing I should mention is your color scheme may be different. I think I saw some Pinnacle folks on the line. So your back office here is green, and others that are say in this strange eggplant color. If you're interested in a purple back office system, but again, all of that functionality is still the same. What I wanted to show you here, if I open up, say this managing conflict class, down at the bottom, and these options are what you've seen in the past. What's new here is the enable course forms and enable session forms. So if I wanted, say, everyone that had attended this managing conflict class to be part of a course forum after, so they could share ideas, they can go in and do that. So again, a fairly minor change there, but wanted to make sure that I showed you where that particular item was. Some of these field labels have changed, so for new requirements, these are also defaults. If you may have think about the current system or the system that you've worked in the past, the course itself doesn't really have a default for assignments, right? The assignment, things like the priority, the frequency, the grace period, are always held at the requirement level, right? So if I want to assign something to a team or assign something to a job title, I would set my priority, grace period, those things there. Had a number of requests over the years from clients that said, hey, when I add a course, I might want to set that as something that by default will always be assigned as a priority 1 when I make assignments, regardless of where it is. And you can still override that when you make the requirement, but those defaults are now in place. The other thing, and again, I won't run the reports here because there's I don't think they're as frequently used as a lot of other items. But from a reporting standpoint, we've done some cleanup with things like the charge reports. So especially in the separation of people that are charged versus people that are not charged. Let me grab one here that has charge students and then do not charge students there at the bottom. The summary reports also give a little easier breakdown, so I can see for a charge code the number of charges, and if there is a budget amount for a particular year, if they are over or under budget for any of those items. So again, just some changes to the charge reports to make them a little more friendly. The last thing, really from a back office standpoint, that I wanted to point out is it's really a help item. So I just clicked on the icon there for the online help, right in the top right corner, and I'm going to show my menu in this case. Under this menu now, I'm going to just open up the top level. There's this whole area called visual topics, and the visual topics are really small training segments. They're course modules, and I'm going to just expand all of these guys so we can see what's out there. But some of the things that I recognize are areas where people will have questions. Things like calculating requirements, right? Calculating the due date for requirements. So what's the process there for, for doing that? So what do I need to know? What is the effective and assignment date, or what do the effective and assignment dates do? It will step me through the grace period and frequency, or things like I want to schedule reports to run inside the system. How do I do that? Well, first I have to save a report as a favorite. If you're concerned with how to set favorites, we can take a look at another option here. But now inside a particular page, I can see what do those option items mean? What does the output section mean? What is the recurrence pattern? So if I want that report to come out, every week on Monday, how do I set that up inside the system? So again, just a friendlier way of getting to that different information, and especially those more nuanced things like using the scheduled reports with an output to a team, so that when someone finishes class A, they get assigned to a team with requirements B, C, and D, right? So all those things that that are a little more advanced functions are things that you might not run into day in and day out, and want to be able to go through and take a look at. The final thing here, I won't continue trying to wow you with online help, is really that Learn4ia side, and really more of a mention, because we have a couple groups now that have already piloted and are working with Learn4ia. And initially, the idea behind Learn4ia when it rolled out a couple years ago was to be able to set up an e-commerce portal. So if someone wanted to go through and say, gosh, you know what, I'm going to buy 4 instances of this course, I could add it to a cart. I can go through my kind of standard cart function, update those if that's assigned to me or if that's going to be assigned to others. I could check out and sorry, I can't speak and type at the same time. But if I have, again, a couple things in my cart, and I go through that checkout process, either putting in a credit card. In this case, I've got a discount code I've already set, which I see a lot of folks use for kind of key clients. I might send those things out, so I can place that order. And now if I want to make assignments out to students, I can go in and say, all right, this one I want to send to Stephanie Welder, and put in her email address there, and it will submit that assignment. It will email the person. In this case, if she doesn't have a ID into the system, then she would be able to create a profile there and take that course. And when that person does take it, it will claim that message. If she never claims it, I can always reassign it. So again, the idea behind Learn4ia was really that extended enterprise, the external folks, but they were at the beginning very separate systems based on the same architecture. Now what we can do is we can set an entire site inside your back office system so that it operates as a Learn4ia site. And if you go in and say schedule a course in a site that is flagged as a Learn4ia site, then it will show up in that Learn4ia interface for external folks. So with groups that are managing training both for their internal employees and need what I think of as a easier user interface for their external folks or infrequent users to go through, whether or not they're making or requiring charges for those courses, we can go in and do that. But again, all living in the same system, one common back office for both the traditional learner and the Learn4ia style learner there. All right, with that, we are right about at the quarter till target, and that was my my goal for stepping through. I don't see any questions on the chat side there. But if you'd like to unmute yourself, if you do have a question, I'm certainly glad to take any of those. And if it's something that gets more in depth, we can always take that offline as well.
Morning, sir.
Oh, yes, sir.
Nice to meet you, and a solid presentation. I certainly enjoyed it. But I do have a question on the reporting side.
Okay.
And I haven't been using VTS or been the administrator here at my site for about a year now. It'll be a year in January. But I was looking at the reports, and I noticed VTA is more of an hours-based system. But on the reporting side, is there a report that we could run that can give us a percentage based on the number of classes assigned and the number of classes completed?
Oh, assigned versus completed on a for a particular person or curriculum there?
Well, a particular group. Like the way ours is set up, we're set up by different teams, because you may have a process team, you may have a mechanical team, OSBL, which is outside battery limits. You have these differing teams, and each month they're assigned separate courses. But for each month, they are assigned a number of courses. And to get a better graph of who's training and who's not, for the reports that we have to send both for internal and corporate, they like to see a monthly percentage and a yearly percentage based on the number of people in courses that are assigned. So the problem here is I can't get that information because it's just not set up that way in VTA. I actually have to set up another spreadsheet, take those courses that I assign to people and put them in for each month for each different department, and then run some formulas in order to depict who has training and who hasn't and what the percentage is each month. So I was thinking, does VTA have that kind of reporting?
Yeah, we've got so there's a couple different places, and we'll see what gets us there. And this is also one of those where I'm always glad for always glad for other administrators that have a good good solution in hand to speak up there. We can always learn from each other. Requirements, and I think this is really not quite the I don't know if I'm going to quite answer your question with this one. In this case, I'm just separating my admin department versus my maintenance department versus my production department. I could do that with teams that I supervise as well, or I can do this in back office. Now, this is a status graph, so it's going to show for a particular date, a particular. Oh, I guess I should select my students, for a particular end date, what their complete versus incomplete status is. Now, because I'm running this from Learner, the focus is really on the student. So I can see that, Sherry's required 19 items and she's only met 6 of those. From back office, I have the ability to go in and, again, in my requirements reports, right? Because I'm focused on the particular assignment and whether or not someone has completed it. I can do that, as a status report, and course status is limited just to a course or group of courses. Student status will show me anything that's assigned to that person, really regardless of how it's assigned, where I can split out if I just want job title requirements or just want team requirements. But on the what tab here, so the who tab of this report, I'm going to go ahead and grab. I'm going to use departments again, just because I don't have as much faith in my team data in this database. But if I want to look at a summary graph now, for a particular date, and let me use this through the end of November, I can see just my overall percentage for each of those 3 groups. So admin department has 900 things assigned. They've completed 200 of those. So, they're down at the 200% range. Getting that information. The other thing is back on the learner side, under the requirements reports there, especially from a graphical standpoint. So here, this past versus future training, and then the forecast of upcoming training. So this is just the things that are coming up for whatever group I have selected. So if I want to see just my my ERT team, I'm going to deselect, unselect everybody else. Well, it's a bad example because I don't have any forecast training coming up from those folks. So I'm going to add my admin department, a couple groups there, so I can actually see those. But now if I want to see for the month of January, that's the only course or only thing that's coming due. If I want to see February, March, I guess I can do that. I can also look, here are the things as of today that are past due versus coming due, and I can output those directly to Excel, or I could also, if I say wanted to, I'll maybe use this percent complete graph, and I want to see my admin department versus my emergency response team versus my HSE work area, and wanted to share that graph, I could go in and just create it as a image, or output that as a PDF.
So on that particular dashboard, you can actually show as many departments as you choose to without it becoming too convoluted.
That's a good question. This circle graph, I'm going to grab all the ones that I have there, and on this circle graph, I can accommodate up to 10 groups. If I get more than 10, what will happen is it will break out into a bar graph like this. But you see, so for so it looks more like this versus the closing circles. But yeah, I can do that and catch the percentage, for a particular point in time here.
Okay. Now, is there any report that I know you showed the one that you run in the requirement reports, but are there any reports that can actually break it down to where you can get a month-to-month correlation as to what the training looked like?
I was just thinking that it would sure be nice to have. And I'm gonna ask Ann if she might make note on that one for me, so I don't let it slip off my plate. But I wonder if there's a capability of adding a date range here versus looking at a particular point in time. It may not make sense for all the charts, but certainly for the completion percentage, it seems like
Right.
a good one. So yeah, I can at least find that one out, that answer out.
Sounds good. But the dashboard, I haven't not used that yet, so I'm going to try to take advantage of that in the upcoming year and actually use that, because that'd be good reporting, and it has such good detailed information, so I can see where the advantage would come without having to recreate or reinvent the wheel. Or this dashboard would really be useful.
Good. All right, it looks like I do have a couple other questions in the chat there. One of those is, do you have a timeline for rollout? And essentially, we are kind of rolling things out now. We've got some folks that are already piloting. I also have a question. Oh, and I don't know that I have an answer for this one. Is that, do I have a report that shows employees that need tests reset? It goes on to mention that there are the limit test to 3, and then it gets locked, and kind of what's the norm there. Somebody by all means help me out if there's something I'm overlooking there. But but I don't believe offhand I have a good report for. Let me take a look at my my to-do list on the portal here. I have things that I need to approve, enrollments I need to approve. Scheduled training. I don't know that I have a single report that shows me just all of the tests that need reset. But I will. That's one. Let me see if I can come up with a better answer on that one, or if anyone else has feedback, I'd love to know there. All right. Okay. All right. Well, I'm showing us right about 5 minutes to the top of the hour. So I can render that time back back to you guys. If you do have questions, things that come up after the call, by all means, again, my contact information there. Never hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'll with the standard warning of, I spend a lot of time on the road, so if you need something mission critical, you're sitting across the desk from the auditor, make sure you reach out to that support@risc-inc.com email, or VTA support@risc-inc.com email, because they will be much more timely in getting back often there, but never take that as a me trying to get out of getting contact. So always let us know if there's something that we can do. And again, these changes that are added to the system really get there because we get your feedback, whether that's a general suggestion or whatever the case is there. So please always let us know what you see, what's out there. The other thing that I think that these sessions always have the opportunity of identifying for me is folks will look at things and say, gosh, I didn't even know whatever existed. I didn't know supervisor approvals existed, or I didn't know that I could set up delegates so that someone else could make my approvals while I'm on vacation or I'm out of town, or whatever the case is there. So if you do have things configured off the screen, things that you don't see, I always appreciate having these opportunities to get together and step through those, so that you can get a glimpse of some of those functions inside the system that you may not use day in and day out. So with that, I will give you back the rest of your morning for everybody on this call. And if there is anything that you need, never hesitate to let us know.